You're listening to the Everyday Astrology Podcast. I'm Hilary Scott, your astrologer, and I'm here to bring you the current planetary conditions. So, welcome to 2022. It is destined to be a much better year than the last 2 years, so we've got that to look forward to. It's been pretty crazy, as I'm sure you can attest to. One of the things that's quite cool is that this year, we're starting off the year with a Capricorn new moon. It's the first new moon of the year, of the new year. And it is actually quite auspicious in that it helps us to lay foundations and figure out where we want to go with a very kind of executive ability and a focus to the future, because Capricorn is it's not just future focused, because often it will try to uphold traditions and things like that. But it's also can be very spiritual, and the spiritual energy of Capricorn really wants to dig deep down and make sure that the foundations are very solid. So we can tap into that. And it also gives us a real clear sort of planning ability. We can make plans. We understand what we need to do. We know what our responsibility is, and we can respond to our abilities, which I think is important, because we may have all kinds of special skills and talents that we just sort of ignore. And then, then the world doesn't get to benefit from whatever it is we might have to share. And we feel like our soul or our spirit feels sort of disowned and ignored. And then you'll manifest feeling disowned and ignored outside yourself. So it's best to just kind of step into position and be who you're meant to be and take control. Especially being your own boss is important now. Kind of being the one that's in charge of your situation will make you feel more secure and grounded and stable. And knowing that you can trust your own self, that you're the one generating what you want in life, can help you feel stable and happy and content. Contentment. Is there anything better than contentment? So one of the things that you can do for the new moon in Capricorn is, like usual, write down your goals. Write down, write down your biggest lifelong goals. Think super big. You can always revise on another new moon, but to just be sure to get down all your ideas, every little thing, the biggest and best, and even the little ones that don't seem that important. Just write it all down. Even do a mind map is a good way to control it, or to lay it all out for you. There is a trine to this new moon from Uranus, and Uranus is in Taurus, busting up all what seemed stable and making sure that it's not, bringing in new. Uranus is like lightning flashes of new ideas. It's the rebel change maker. It's the genius humanitarian. And it very much does think towards the future, but also in a liberating way. How are we going to liberate this situation? How are we going to create freedom for all and honor individuality and unique capabilities, and not try to put everybody in a box. The Saturnian energy can sometimes be this is how we do it, and if you don't like it, hit the road kind of thing. But with this Uranian energy tying in, we can really step into who we are and be who we are and walk through the world in that way. And then that way you're really kind of producing a frequency that other like-minded companions can pick up and zone into. So though you might end up facing a lot of rejection if you speak up or stand out or do something differently in the beginning of your, newfound bravery, in the end, you'll end up attracting people who are so much more compatible and supportive and loving and accepting of who you really are. So it's worth it. Remember that Uranus can, ruffle the feathers or rub people the wrong way, but that's just people who are stuck not changing. Changing folk are always dazzled by the Uranian energy and want to see the new and want to bring in different. So tap into that side of it, and it's kind of very electrifying. There's definitely a buzz in the air. The new moon also has a sextile to Neptune, and Neptune, it's so magical. It can tap us into, it rules the film industry and music and poetry and art and spirituality and psychic abilities and all these very sort of dazzling. It can tap into the chart of luxury and privilege and like success, especially in matters of music or film or those sorts of artistic endeavors. Neptune is usually there, and it is sextiling this new moon. So there might be some sort of magic that you can create, something magical in your life, something spiritual. Maybe you are there to help in some way or to offer yourself in service, to be helpful, right? The Neptunian energy can be a real like humanitarian, we're all one, we're in this together. And for real though, in a very compassionate way. And you got to start out also having compassion for yourself and like honoring your feelings as they come up and what those feelings might be. We are all under the influence of the Venus retrograde as well. And it's kind of about halfway through right now. And that Venus retrograde energy, it can be like it's kind of a trip to the underworld, right? So you might be in touch with things that you didn't even know that you were out of touch with, which is like lucky, I guess. It can be, it basically, it does this, they call it the 8-pointed star of Venus, and it goes through an 8-year cycle. So now at the Venus retrograde in Capricorn, there was a similar energy 8 years ago. So think back to 2013, 2014 and see where you were, see what you were going through at that time. And there is likely to be a similar theme going on right now, but also with a more evolved you, someone who's, come through the last 8 years of lessons. So hopefully you'll be like, if you're like for me, 8 years ago, I went through this like really heartbreaking experience where someone that was important to me just stopped communicating with me. And I was like, okay, like, I guess this is it. Like, there's nothing I can do. And it was really heartbroken. It really was quite like a devastating, sad experience for me. But then 2 years later, they kind of popped back in and were like, gave some sort of mild explanation that didn't relate to anything. And there they were again. And so I was like, yeah, sure. Like, welcome them back into my world to communicate with. And then it's now happened again where I've just been kind of ghosted, I guess. And instead of feeling heartbroken like I was 8 years ago, I don't care. I feel like, okay, that I get it. Like, and the astrology is actually really helpful because I can see this pattern, right? I can go back and be like, oh, that happened then, and now it's happening again. And where am I now? And, with the 8 years of growth I've gone through, plus I'm in the middle of my Chiron return, so it's a real house cleaning kind of experience. I don't feel sad about it this time. This time I'm like kind of like relieved, like let's move on then. If we can't sort of find some common ground and a connection and, feel any sort of affinity or fondness for each other, then what the hell are we doing? So I'm grateful for that. And I feel like even though it can be difficult, because there's like, letting go can be difficult. But with this Uranian energy mixed into this whole show, I don't feel like it's that difficult. Instead, I feel liberated. And I don't want, I think when you've got like abandonment issues and stuff, you can tend to like hang on to the crumbs that people offer you when really, you deserve the whole like box of cookies or a jar of cookies, or probably, hopefully they're gluten-free because otherwise, mucus. But it's important to not settle for crumbs, and you deserve more. And Venus will get us in touch with what our real values are. And hopefully if things that go against or out of the realm of what your heart and soul truly value, then they'll be gone. And that'll be good because there's room for the new and room to open up. And if you don't distract yourself with complications, then you have so much more energy for what you really want to create in your life. So it's a pretty big bang of a start to the new year with this new moon in Capricorn. And really, like, you will have clarity of thought, an ability, even though Neptune is in there, it's in a supportive kind of like allowing you to see the big picture kind of way rather than being, maybe head in the clouds, not really connecting with reality. So it can help you in a more magical way, but not necessarily in a like causing illusion, which Neptune can often do. Monday, the 3rd, has some really lovely aspects connecting to the moon. And so again, there's sort of a depth of thinking and an ability to get to the root of it. And like that deep thinking, like me looking back 10 or 8 years ago and being like, oh yeah, that happened then and it's happening again now. But what have I learned? What have I figured out? What did I gain? What did I lose? Like all of this sort of thinking is very good this week. You'll be able to do it and get clarity. And once you have clarity, you can really move on. And that's real nice. Let's just see. There's also, this is kind of a big thing coming up on the 8th. We have Venus in Cazimi with the sun, which means it's like right on top of the sun. So Venus, and it's retrograde. So again, like this sort of real clarifying your values and maybe what you've lost and what you've let go of, but also what you want to gain can become very clear right now. Like, what are you working towards? What do you value that you haven't brought into your life yet? And what do you need to kind of like amp up, bring it into your life, figure it out. And we can do that when we're kind of like deep in our soul, right? Which Venus retrograde going into the depths of the underworld helps us get in touch with like our deep longing and our dreams and what we value and people that we value and relationships that we value and money, like all those things, all these values that we may have we can get in touch with what those are and hopefully set a straight path to the direction that we're going. Because we need to figure out where we're going before we get on the highway. So this is a really good time in life, in this dark of the moon, which is like winter, which is totally against our intuition. It's interesting that we make it such a big like, let's make our New Year's resolutions and all of that stuff when it's like the dead of winter. And winter is not for like necessarily accomplishing great tasks. It's a lot more about going within and hibernating and exploring the dream world and connecting to our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings on things. So in spring, when we have the equinox, then we get in touch with like launching and beginning again, like nature shows us, like the seeds sprout and the flowers come up, and then life starts like furiously growing when spring happens. And right now, life is not furiously growing. Instead, it is like holding up and keeping warm and dreaming and maybe writing poetry or writing in your journal. Journaling is so powerful when it comes to this sort of energy. So maybe do some of that while we've got all this energy. The Venus retrograde ends the 19th, and then we'll start going forward again. So it's a really long time for Venus to spend in Capricorn. And it can really help aid us in, actually making plans that bring in big money too. Capricorn often relates to like big money, not just like, oh, well, that's a kind of a nice idea, but like, that's how you generate wealth. So if you're into that, you might want to put that on your list because this sort of energy can help draw that in. And then the more money you have and the more money I have, then the more money we can share into the world and maybe help others with or offer in service. Like it, money often does translate to power. So why not put it on your list? Because then you can use it as well for the greater good in whatever way is possible for you. So that kind of wraps up what's going on in the cosmos right now at the beginning of the year. I hope that you make some really clear plans and get super certain about what you want to create and let your heart lead and let what you love lead. And I hope that you feel, loved and supported and important and all those things and are capable of drawing to you what you know you're worth. So thank you so much for listening. Many blessings for a most beautiful 2022.